You're listening to Soundrise Podcast, a show hosted by Alex in Serbia and Vlada in Poland.
Each week we cover a different artist or band and engage in open spontaneous debates and discussions about specific parts of their discographies. Our goal is to expand their musical horizons and cover a great range of genres and styles.
Find us on Patreon, patreon.com/soundrisepod, and on social media @soundrisepod.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Soundrise Podcast. Alexander, how are you feeling this morning?
Hello Vlada, good morning to you. I'm feeling kind of tired. It's been a slightly rough week here. We had some somewhat long holiday break here in Serbia, a bank holiday and also a religious holiday. So, after that amount of time, spent relaxing, you just have to go back to work. And there were also some other stuff. I'm also enjoying the nice weather. And honestly, I think this morning recording has its flaws and positives, so we'll see how it goes today. I think our very first morning episode was Fugazi, and that went very well, right?
Yes, so usually we tend to record in the afternoon or evening, but this time we're recording in the morning. Of course, this is somewhat irrelevant for you, our dear listeners, because you get our episodes at the exact same time every week. But we'll see how well we're going to perform. We have a bit of a morning coffee now, and we're going to talk about a very interesting artist. But before we move on to that, I would like to say a few things. So, as you may know, if you follow us on social networks, it's been exactly or now already more than 1 year since we started. So we cannot be more proud of being able to reach out to you, dear listeners, and to discuss music, and knowing that you follow us, that you listen to us, that you care about what we say is, I think, our greatest accomplishment so far. So please, if you have any feedback, if you want to tell us about something that you don't agree with or you agree with, if you want to add some comments about certain artists that we are not knowledgeable enough about, please make sure you do so. We would appreciate that greatly. But also another thing that I want to point out is how much help and assistance we got during this time, especially from our patrons. But another thing that's even more important is to mention that there is also another person behind the scenes, my fiance Asha, who's done incredible job setting everything up, and we're so happy to have her as well. She's the one who basically organized everything so well together with Alexander. I'm not so good at organizing stuff, so the two of them took care of it, and I think that we wouldn't be here without that. Wouldn't you agree, Alexander?
Yes, it's been a very exciting year, and the birthday present that we got here at Sunrise was appearing on International Podcast Day's broadcast. It was last week on April 24, and it was absolutely fantastic. It's received quite a response from our audience. So, guys, if you want to check that out, we have both the video and the audio clip um, published on YouTube and all the podcast platforms that we use. So it's been a great year. I think podcasting is, experiencing a huge expansion during this pandemic, and being this authentic music podcast is really a pleasure, Vlada, isn't it?
Yes, for sure. And I hope that we can continue doing this for a long time. But we're really looking forward to hearing more from you. So if you have any comments about this year, let us know. Looking back, I'm really impressed how much we've grown over the course of a year. I think if you listen to some of our earlier episodes, we sound like completely different people. So this is a great experience for us being able to develop these podcasting skills as well. So, okay, let's cut to the chase and go to the artist that I selected for today. So, um, it's a blues artist, Alexander. You were kind of skeptical of blues, even though I know you like the blues generally speaking, but sometimes you make certain remarks about it. Were you excited to listen to another blues artist?
You're right. I think the blues is kind of a hit or miss for me. And I was actually excited because it's been a long time since we did a blues musician. I think Muddy Waters was the last one, which was I think our ninth episode, if I'm not mistaken. It's been 40 plus episodes so far, guys. So really hard to remember, so to say. But yeah, I was sort of excited, especially because it's an artist that, according to you, is not so popular. It's not a famous act. Maybe if you're a blues fan, you know it, but to me, this was completely new. So looking forward to discussing it.
All right, so we're talking about a Chicago blues guitar player, Jimmy Dawkins. Um, what can be said about him? Actually, while doing my research, I didn't find a lot of information about him, unfortunately. But as many blues greats, he was born in Mississippi, in Chula, but he moved to Chicago in 1955 to work in a matchbox factory. And the thing is that he soon left this job and started playing blues professionally as a session man. So he played for a number of different artists until eventually in 1971 he finally released his debut record, and he was assisted by Magic Sam, another blues great who was his friend, who got him this deal, who enabled him to get this record deal. And thanks to Magic Sam, the world was treated to this absolutely amazing blues guitar player and singer that we're going to talk about today. He had a quite prolific career. He did a lot of recordings and touring in Europe as well, in France and other countries. It seems like he was never in the spotlight, unlike some other blues greats, which is why I think I selected him for today. I want people to hear about this great artist. I don't think that he's any worse than other blues greats that you listen people talk about all the time. You know, the likes of Otis Rush or B.B. King or Albert King or you know the all the other ones. I think Jimmy Dawkins deserves to be in that on that pantheon of legends of the blues. And today we're going to discuss why. Um, he he died in 2013, leaving a great legacy behind him. He also did a column for a blues magazine called Living Blues, where he talked about different experiences on the blues scene. And I think what you get from this artist is the genuine love for the music and for the scene and for his fans, and even some of the lyrics reflect that perfectly well, which is something we're going to touch upon over the course of this episode. So Jimmy Dawkins, I would say, is one of those people with a very very special, very original style of playing and singing, which is why I think he never sounds boring. He never really sounds generic like so many other blues artists. But of course, that's always the case when we talk about authentic Mississippi born and bred blues artists. So, Alexander, without any further ado, I want to move on to the first record, to the debut record by Jimmy Dawkins called, interestingly enough, Fast Fingers. So, before I go into my own diatribe about this, I would like to hear a few thoughts of your own.
All right, Vlada, thanks for that great introduction. It's always great when we find these musicians that don't really get talked about, and we just want our audience to pay, some attention to these kind of artists. So that's great. That's the point of Soundrise, after all. But when it comes to this album, This is the debut album, right, in 1969, and I think if I'm not mistaken, the name of this album would later become Jimmy Dawkins's nickname, right? Jimmy Fast Fingers Dawkins, as I
Yes,
saw on
or
Google.
maybe it was already his nickname. Here it says 1969. I said 1971, so I think I was mistaken about that. So thanks for that correction. Yeah, Fast Fingers is his nickname, which is not really an appropriate nickname for a number of reasons, but we will talk about it. Please continue, Alexander.
Yeah, that could be a really interesting topic. So, you know that I'm not a huge fan of blues, but I can single out positives and I can find something that I like about a certain blues band. As a matter of fact, one of my longest standing bands, in my, let's say, music collection is The Doors, and they are in many ways considered to be blues musicians, right? So this album is, to me, very good in the sense of instrumentation. So just like just like the rest of the albums, this is the album that I listen to in a specific way. So this is how I approached it. I played the album. I don't really pay too much attention on individual tracks unless I hear something very eye-catching, and I just enjoy it as a, let's say, pure blues playlist. I really enjoyed the instrumental work, especially the guitar, which is no surprise. Jimmy was the guitarist here, but the other instruments are really up there. The rhythm section is fantastic, and I was genuinely impressed with the squad of musicians that Jimmy managed to attract with him. Also, one great thing about this specific album is I don't know if this was on purpose, but it really has that live gig feel. There was a couple of times where I really thought, am I at a gig? Obviously it's the
Yeah, yeah.
pandemic. Yeah, so you can't go to gigs, unfortunately,
It
but this
sounds
album really
so
gives you that
raw,
feel.
so live.
Yeah, you just feel like you're there, and that was a great thing. I think the production is fantastic here. Now moving on to the individual tracks, I want to single out Triple Section. The standard instrumental lineup was great, but the saxophone was a fantastic addition, and that's why I want to single out that track. I finally learned a lesson. There's this really cool, subtle organ in the background, and the guitar was phenomenal. Again,
Mm, yeah,
uh,
such a great showcase of his guitar playing that one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, Vlada, any thoughts on your side? I guess you have more comments than me.
Oh, I really liked your comments though. The music does sound very much alive, and as you point out, the whole band just cooks. It's just incredible, like how everyone plays in such great unison. And the thing about it is they don't sound super clean all the time. Sometimes they deliberately go into sloppy moments, like they speed up the tempo, and you have this sense that the song's gonna fall apart, but it never does, and it's deliberate. And listening to this kind of these type of virtuoso musicians is just incredible. And but it never sounds boring to me. Even though I do admit that sometimes this record might be difficult to take in one setting, but individually, every song is just blisteringly good. Let me just point out some of my highlights. Uh, of course, the first track on the record that you did not mention, It Serves You Right. I think this is, in my opinion, uh, this is an incredible blues recording, probably one of the best blues recording from that period that I've ever heard. And just actually, to be fair, as good as other songs are, following that track, they do feel a bit underwhelming to me, because this is just such a great example of everything great about the electric blues. There is this kind of inherent tension to the song, every element carries that tension, whether it's the rhythm section, whether it's the horn section, the guitar, and everything just swings from the get go. And then you have his vocal delivery, which is menacing, assertive. Uh, there are moments where, like he does this very passionate kind of uh, singing where it kind of breaks away from the ordinary by numbers blues performance. Uh, what about the guitar playing? I don't even know where to start. Sharp, piercing, confident guitar notes. That's the style that Jimmy is known for. Maybe not fast fingers as they put it here, even though it's obvious that he's capable of playing very fast, but he never does because his phrasing is very measured and it sounds uh, so organic, so real, so tangible. And you know what this also reminded me of? The vocal performance, it kind of reminded me of the late day Bob Dylan. When Bob Dylan does his blues tracks, it kind of reminds me of that. I even wonder whether Bob Dylan picked it up from artists like Jimmy Dawkins. I guess he
I had the
probably
same
did.
impression, yeah.
Mhm.
The
And
same
that,
impression, not on this record, but we'll talk about it
yeah,
later.
yeah, and I don't know. This is probably one of the most impressive blues recordings I've heard. But then the rest of the record also cooks. I Wonder Why follows. It's more great blues, of course. Scorching playing by Jimmy. Uh, Great opening guitar lines. These piercing, sharp guitar lines that he plays here on this record. I also want to talk about the way his style changed over the years. That's another thing that's really interesting. So on this first record, he has this very aggressive playing style, almost sounds angry. And you know what I also want to point out, and I think this is a bit controversial, and I want you to tell me whether you agree on about this. If a white guitar player, let's say Eric Clapton or somebody like that, recorded stuff like this, solos like this, guitar like this, everybody would be hailing it as the greatest playing of all time, masterpiece, whatnot. But when people like Jimmy Dawkins do it, it kind of remains overshadowed. Wouldn't you agree? Didn't you notice that?
Um, Not really, to be fair. I mean, when I think about the blues, if if we're gonna talk about race, I think Eric Clapton is the only name that springs to mind. The rest of it is, these usual guys that you mentioned earlier in the episode. So, I
I
mean,
don't
I'm not
know.
really a blues fan, so
But I don't know about that. I mean, I don't want to. This is a very touchy subject. Of course, it doesn't matter whether you're white or black. If you're a great musician, you're a great musician. I'm talking more about the perception, and I think this is particularly the problem among more rock oriented fans. Like me, for example, I wasn't so much into the blues in the past. I usually got my blues through rock bands, right? So but
same here. Yeah.
once I discovered the authentic blues artist, I started feeling very differently about it. I feel like people like Magic Sam, for example, and Jimmy Dawkins are not talked about enough. And if you look at all these best guitar players of all time lists, most of the blues guitarists on there are white, like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Clapton and Dwayne Allman, who is my favorite, but still, I'm just trying to make a point here. And it's not that these people are not deserving. Of course, I say Dwayne Allman is my favorite, but it seems like similarly great black players are often overlooked or taken for granted. You usually have those names like B.B. King, Albert King, but it doesn't go beyond that. And that's my point. I don't know. I mean, we could have a whole episode on this issue, but this is something that I was thinking about while listening to Jimmy Dawkins. And I would like to hear from you, dear listeners. What do you think? Is this really a problem? Is there a problem with race when it comes to how we perceive the blues? Is the blues kind of whitewashed? Not because of the musicians, but because of the media, because of the fans. Because musicians are just musicians and they all play together. You know, Jimmy Dawkins had white musicians. Muddy Waters had white musicians. So it doesn't matter whether you're black or white, but what matters is that the blues is originally African American music. It's their culture, and that's where you get the authentic blues. And sometimes I feel like blues has become this white genre, and that's why I feel a lot of modern blues lacks the excitement of these old recordings. So let me know what you think. But let's go back to the records at hand. You mentioned triple trebles, a great instrumental, and also I agree with you. I finally learned a lesson is so cool because that organ and horns and guitar, such a great interplay. And it's mostly Jimmy soloing. And I like the whole build up. He builds the solo slowly and it gets more intense as it goes along. And at some point, the tempo gets faster. As I said earlier, you feel like the band is on the verge of collapsing, which is so exciting. But of course, they keep everything in the pocket. And then at the end of the song, the singing kicks in as some kind of climax, a great climax, and Jimmy laments his woman kicking him out or something like that. These moments are so precious. Would you agree? Was that one of your highlights as well, for sure?
Yeah, yeah, kind of. I do remember those individual moments, and listening to these records was all about spotting, these special elements of the music. Because, as much as I think that the blues tends to sound too uniformed, Jimmy actually managed to bring in some diversity, I would say. Another track that I'm not sure that you have mentioned is Night Rock. It's I think one of the catchiest tunes on this record, Vlada.
Yeah, I absolutely love this track, Night Rock. It's also one of my highlights here. Um, a great groove established right at the beginning, and then this typical piercing solo kicks in, and it just wow. This song is just wow. I don't know what else to say. Great groove, great instrumental. Just a lot of pieces here seem to serve as a showcase for his guitar playing. I think that's why the record is named Fast Fingers. And you know what? We're gonna skip a few records, of course, and go to a more mature period of his career. And it's interesting to me how his priorities changed a bit. So here, this record is all about the guitar playing. I would say, even though all the other elements are amazing. But then the other records, of course, feature great guitar, but to me it seems like the emphasis is more on songwriting rather than just playing the blues. And so let's maybe move on to the next record, but before we do that, of course, we have the ratings. So Alexander, your final words, your highlight, and your rating for this record.
All right. I generally think that this is a mature record, a very good start, a very good debut record. I'm really surprised that this musician doesn't get a lot of mentions in the music world. When it comes to the ratings, I think I would give it an 8 out of 10. And the highlight track here is probably the one that I mentioned earlier in the episode, Triple Section. Yeah. And Vlada, before you give your rating, can you just quickly touch on the controversy behind the Fast Fingers label?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I already mentioned this while I was talking about his playing. It's not really the right expression, in my opinion, because his phrasing is very careful, deliberate. There are all these menacing, prolonged tones. It's not like he just plays fast. He has this thing. He has some kind of tricks that he does. For example, where he lays on the note and he repeats it, and it kind of starts getting a bit messy. But it's all deliberate, and I love that. There's a certain kind of grittiness to his playing, and it's obvious he's capable of playing fast because you can hear that here and there. But it's not his priority. He doesn't force it. He doesn't play fast. And generally speaking, all these great blues guys, they avoid playing too fast because it's just wrong sometimes. It doesn't express the emotions the best way. But what's great about these guys is they can play fast. Even Eric Clapton has this nickname Slow Hand, for example. But Eric Clapton could play fast. You can hear that too. But he's nicknamed Slow Hand because of the way he phrased. And similarly, I think Jimmy Dawkins should have been named Slow Hand rather than Fast Fingers if you catch my drift. So I don't know. I think this is a misnomer. Would you agree?
Yeah, I was also a bit surprised because especially on the next record that we're gonna discuss, there were some slow-paced songs that worked quite well.
Oh yeah, his playing really changes on the next record we're gonna talk about, and also on the last record that we're gonna talk about, his playing changes as well. So, to me, it's really impressive how this guitar player kept himself fresh, didn't rely on the same tricks over and over again. So let's move on. Oh no, we're about to
Yeah, the
do the
rate.
ratings.
We got
So,
distracted a bit.
you said 8.5. Your
No, no,
favorite
eight,
track?
eight.
Eight,
Sorry.
sorry. Eight, your favorite track, Alexander?
Yeah, the favorite track is Triple Section with the sax.
All right, I would say, actually, I want to give this a 9. I'm just afraid that it might be too high, but everything sounds so awesome that I feel if I give it less than 9, that it's kind of an injustice because it's such a special record from the point of view of musicianship. There's so many wow moments, and that opening track is really something to behold. I think that kind of pumps it up to 9. But let's say this is kind of a very tentative 9. Maybe 8.5 is more suitable. Yes, it serves me right. Is definitely my highlight. I think I'm just please, dear listeners, maybe stop this podcast and go and listen to the track. Just just listen to it.
Just
Leave
to give you
everything else.
guys a
Drop everything
glimpse.
else. Listen to it.
Just to give our listeners a little, teaser to, how great this record sounds, right?
Yes, just go and listen to it. I mean, I just don't know. I mean, if you know what, if as I said, if somebody like Eric Clapton recorded something like that, people would be like, "Oh my God, Eric Clapton is God" and all this stuff. But when it's a black man doing it, we get somewhat different comments, unfortunately.